Thanks for tuning in, you guys. I'm Ben. This is Lennon. This is going to be a mobility flexibility session that focuses on, well, you've guessed it, some middle split. And you can tell that we're not professionals, but we're going to do what we can on here. We're going to be focusing on middle split, some pancakes, and a straddle L sit. And they all have a little bit of an overlap together.
So we're going to show you some of the exercises and walk through some of the exercises we've been doing. Follow along or save them for later. And stick around to the end of the video to see how much we improve just by doing this session.
All right, we're starting the session with a standing pancake. It's a good opportunity for us to see exactly where we are in the beginning of the session and then at the end of the session. You'll see that I'm relatively switched on right here, so I'm trying to pull myself down into it. For the first 30 seconds here, I can keep my hands on the ground. I just make sure that I'm not shifting forward here, right? I can use the yoga block as a reference point. If I need to, I can go also a little bit higher here. And I try to pull myself down here. I'm not grabbing onto my ankles. I'm just using them as a little bit of support here. Over the course of the 60 seconds that we're going, we want to aim to be able to start to increase that range.
Next one, we're going to work on the horse stance. So you can either use your feet to take these steps and do about 5 outwards and then go here, or just choose a width where you're able to get your knees in line with your hips. And then you're really opening your legs, trying to pull your knees back and your pelvis forward so that you're going into that wide straddle. And then from here, you can use some support. And it may look a bit zesty, but you just got to trust the process. Going in and out of that range while still pulling the knees backwards. And you can also try going side to sides a little bit.
So for the piriformis stretch, we just want to get a good stretch out of our glutes on this one. So if I tuck this leg in as tight as I can, and I loop this foot around, then I might already start to begin in a bit of a stretch, depending on your current flexibility level. I can also intensify that by pushing this knee more forward here, angling the arc of my foot off of the ground, and then start to hug this knee. And I twist myself in. I can also extend my chest to intensify the stretch there. And then I'm just holding. Add a bit of a rotation in here.
Okay, next we're going to work on these side kicks so that we can work on like actively opening up the legs, fighting against gravity. So again, it's nice to use a bit of support. Ideally, you're not using this to support too much of your body weight, and it's more just as a balance there. You're going to just first lift the knee, and then try and extend the hips so I'm nice and flat along here. And I'm trying to get the knee as hard from the ground as I can get. So I'm actively squeezing a lot through my abductors and my glute too by keeping this hip really extended. You can obviously turn the upper body away a little bit to create a bit more room. And then from here, trying to extend this leg out, increasing the length of that knee bar, which is going to make this a lot more intense. And I'm just holding this position here, still actively feeling like I'm pulling that leg up.
We added in a little bit of spinal oblique lat, kind of lateral flexion on here. Alternate my hands in the setup position here. One underhand and one overhand. I have the underhand one closest to me, and I reach away here. Higher of a position, the easier it is in some ways. But once you start to get the hip off the ground, like right here, then you obviously have quite a bit of extra load going through that position. Squeezing the butt, and you can also add a little bit of rotation here too, getting into extension.
Okay, now we're revisiting that horse stance, but this time we're loading that pulse. So getting again into that position where you're able to keep pretty upright in your spine, and grabbing a kettlebell or whatever you've got around that has some weight to it, probably between 12 and 20 kilos is usually pretty good. Trying to keep those knees nice and open, that upper body nice and upright, and then pulsing in and out of that bottom range. It's pretty intense in the quads, but you're also still trying to really squeeze the glutes, push the hips forward.
A wall-based horse stance is quite useful too, because it gives us some feedback as to whether or not we're stacking our chest over our pelvis. About 1 foot length away from the wall, turn my heels out as much as I can, find my width that will complement my hips around the same height as my knees. Push up from there. Yeah. That's right.
Cool, so now we're going to go on to a bit of a pancake. standard for this that I think is useful is if you have either a wall or something like this behind you, if you have the flexibility to be in your straddle and sit upright with your back, at least like the butt scooted up into the corner of the wall and you're able to sit here, then you can just do this without elevation. If this is a really challenging position and you're actually not able to get the butt right into the corner, I recommend starting off by having the butt elevated when doing this. It will just give you a bit more range in there because the angle is not so tight. If you can get your butt into the corner, then you'll be on the floor. What we're going to work through is, first of all, just reaching down into the middle, in here, and then also either side, kind of tilting laterally, and trying to get a little bit of rotation through our spine too. So I like to drop my shoulder kind of down towards my knee, and my shoulders are almost stacked one on top of each other. As I'm inhaling into this long side, imagine it opening up, and then exhaling, just going a bit further into it.
Adding the kettlebell makes it easier in some ways and more difficult in other ways. Sometimes it helps you push into the stretch by adding some weighted assistance into it, but it also complicates your setup because you have a weight overhead too. And you might over-rely just on the lengthening portion of the flexibility component, hanging on to the tension into the hamstrings and adductors, rather than pulling yourself down through your hip flexors. So that's something on one side, I have it on the opposite arm. I can also move the kettlebell this way to help kind of push me down while I'm still pulling in from my hip flexor. Because this is a reference point here to help twist me around. Right? And then if you get that position right, you can really hold that into a deeper position than what you might otherwise be able to do. Just body weight. One of the main events now, which is the straddle L set. We're starting off with an elevation so we can warm up the position. And basically what we're using as one of our standards here is keeping the knees at the same height as our hips. And that will dictate how far out that we're extending our legs. So
Scoot ourselves up here, but as close to the wall as we can get. Scoot yourself right up there, and we're going to go into our straddle from here. It's quite nice to add some resistance with your hands though. Kind of helps you feel a bit more comfortable getting into that range rather than just dropping straight into it. Adding a little bit of resistance, sliding your heels down the wall, kind of pushing into your hands when you're down here. Just then you can kind of relax into it a little more, push the opposite way into your hands. And you'll notice that by doing those sort of things, you kind of get a bit more comfortable in this range than if you were to just drop straight into the...
you ever try kind of bench legs in this position?
I haven't.
Because I feel like I can get a lot of activity through here.
That's pretty good, and I looked and I was like, wait.
Yeah, that's good. That's good protraction, yeah. Oh, dude! Time for one of those Instagram clickbait ones, but unfortunately, I'm not a chick with a big booty. So for this frog pose, I start off just about as wide as I can get my knees apart while still keeping them more or less in line with my hips. Then I keep my heels about the same width as my knees here. I put a decent amount of weight through my arms here, and then I push myself back with my arms, but I'm also trying to pull my hips back from my hip flexors. I almost think about popping my butt as I do that. And then pull back to my end range ability here, and I hold that for about 5 seconds before pulling the heels in just a little bit, and then repeating that. You'll notice that now I have a little bit extra range by making that small adjustment here. I hold that for about 5 seconds before coming in and doing one more with my heels in towards one another and pull back even deeper. Sweet.
Nice.
Oh, Nice, man, nice. All right, so that was the session. There was a lot of exercises to get through, and I think that just depending on what phase that you are in your workouts and into, I guess, the block of training that you're doing, you can consolidate more of the exercises or do what we did, and that was isolating different individual components.
So my phone died right there, but thanks for watching.